Okay, so I was hoping to finish my current video, and that is nearly finished. I was hoping it would be out tomorrow, and that is still a possibility, but then this bombshell dropped. So yes, Games Workshop are making a 40k TV series, live action focused seemingly around Gregor Eisenhorn. Now, as much as I just wanted to keep working on my current video, I knew that if I didn't put this out right here and now, anything that I posted after would literally just be filled with questions asking me to make a video about this, talk about this, give my thoughts, and so on. So I'm making this so we can all get the burning questions and thoughts out of our system, so have at it in the comments, go nuts. This will certainly not be the first video that I'm going to make about this. I'll also take the opportunity to say I know some of you have asked me to do like reaction videos about the Astartes series, etc. I'm not really a fan of reaction videos, but yes, I could maybe look at doing some breakdowns of episodes with specific points about different elements in there. I know Arch did some very good stuff about his actually, where he kind of stops and discusses it, rather than just letting stuff run and talk over it. I dislike that intently. So that was just something else I wanted to take the opportunity to get out of the way. Now, what do we know about Eisenhorn? Well, Games Workshop have said that they're creating a TV show and it's featuring Gregor Eisenhorn. Now, he's a legendary inquisitor of the Imperium. This is being produced by Big Light Productions, who have worked on series most recently notable as Man in the High Castle, and it's being led by Frank Spotnitz, who in his personal TV production history has co-written more than 40 episodes of The X-Files, and he's quoted by Games Workshop about the development as saying that we're delighted to collaborate with Games Workshop to develop the beloved visionary world of Warhammer 40,000 into a TV series. Warhammer 40,000 is steeped in rich and complex lore with a myriad of traditions and stories that have accumulated over time in this threading and complex world, making it one of the most exciting properties to adapt for television audiences and the franchise's loyal global fan base. There's nothing else like it on television, and we're incredibly excited to tap into our own experience creating imaginative, complex and compelling worlds to bring this incredible saga to the screen. It's a lot of words. Now, another critical figure is of course the author Dan Abnett, who is one of many excellent authors working for Games Workshop and Black Library, and Eisenhorn has been richly explored by Dan in his novels. His thoughts about the series were as follows. He says, Gregor Eisenhorn is a relentless force in the dark future of the Warhammer universe, a destroyer of demons and purger of heretics, implacable, powerful and dedicated. But the appeal to me from the moment I started writing him was his complexity. He is not the simple, ruthless hero he appears to be. His battle with the warp leads him into dark places and forces him to question his duty, his understanding of the Imperium and his own identity. With Eisenhorn, it's not just the adventures, and they are certainly vivid, it's the journey he takes to the very limits of what he is and what it means to be loyal. Now, beyond this, we have very little information to go on. It's not even explicitly clear how far in development the series is, but if they have a studio established and announced publicly, it seems likely that things are entering production phase, which means most of the early conceptualization and I would imagine script writing have been ironed out. But I mean, when it comes to scripts, a lot of it's written already, so they probably only had to adapt it for television, so that's going to be very interesting to see how, for example, the books transition into television. But it also raises a lot of questions, and this gives me a good opportunity to get a couple of things off my chest about what was an inevitable turn of events for 40k anyway. Now, first off, if you have no idea who Gregor Eisenhorn is, let's do a very, very brief overview. Now, Gregor was taken at an early age by the greatly feared Black Ships. These ships identify rogue psychers and transport them, assessing what their role will be for the Imperium. He became an acolyte of Inquisitor Hapshunt and was confirmed with the rank of Full Inquisitor in 222 M41 at the mere age of 24 years old. Eisenhorn is a competent inquisitor. He would eventually find himself drawn into a messy affair with a cabal of heretics on the world of Gudrun. The cabal was eventually broken and purged by the Inquisition. Eisenhorn recovered a device known as the Pontius from the cabal, and this held the encoded brain engrams of an infamous heretic, Pontius Glor. Eisenhorn would subsequently regularly interrogate Glor before having the device interred with the Mechanicus. Following after these events led Eisenhorn to investigate the Nectush, a dark tome of chaos knowledge, and this led to confrontations with other radical inquisitors which considered him to have partaken in heretical acts. Eisenhorn would continue to perform his duties, purging and uncovering dark plots by the enemies of mankind, but he lost his left hand in a firefight. Refusing a prosthetic, he instead opted for a vat-grown replacement years later. In 338M41, Eisenhorn would investigate a heretical inquisitor that would become one of his most famous investigations. This led to him and his team posing as mutants to discover a collusion between the inquisitor and rogue psychers. He'd also encounter a demon host that he had first learned of years before and who would continue to blight his existence. His further investigation of the demon hosts led him to Cadia and the radical inquisitor, yet he was later arrested for consorting with demons. He escaped and was declared an outcast, forcing him to then operate as a rogue agent for the remainder of this operation. Eventually tracking down the heretical radical inquisitor, he was cleared of all charges. Shortly afterwards though, Eisenhorn was the victim of a carefully planned attack orchestrated by Pontius Glor, who had escaped the Inquisition's captivity and decided to punish and torment his captors. Almost every facet of Eisenhorn's life was brought crashing down around him, including his career, as he was once again declared an outcast by Inquisitors Ozma and Haldane. Eisenhorn would track down Pontius and eliminate him for good, but this whole tawdry affair did more to deplete Eisenhorn and diminished his resistance to radical methods by which to fight off chaos and other enemies, like his demon host, which continued to harass him and became a constant companion. Eisenhorn later drops out of sight, but is still discussed within the Imperium. Some believe him dead. The truth of this is uncertain. Now, it of course would make sense for me to look at Eisenhorn in more detail soon, and that's something I will add to my list. Now, those of you who check my community tab here on the channel will know I often discuss the direction of the videos, and I've been trying to decide if I should approach videos about individuals in some sort of structure or just do it however the mood takes me. I think with this announcement today, it settles the matter. I'll make videos on individual figures as and how the mood takes me, and then organise them in playlists to a more sensible order. So to finish off, let's just look at a few other things. A big question for me is, how dumbed down will this series be? And this is something which has long concerned me when it comes to 40k, because I'm very interested to see how they approach the material. It's positive for me that they're choosing a TV series format rather than a movie, because movies have to try and force everything into a very short time frame, and often this means dumbing down or providing some oversimplistic narration for the audience. Movies like Blade Runner, Dune suffered from this greatly. With that said, even in a TV series, it's going to be a struggle to bring people up to speed quickly if that's what they want to do. On the other hand, they could just look at this as a very artistic project, which I hope is what they're going for, and that they're going to just throw people in the deep end and say, look, this is what it is, deal with it and find out later. I strongly hope that's the way they go with this, otherwise it's going to be handheld all the way through, and that's significantly going to diminish the narrative impact and just the mood and the depth and the richness of the environment. I strongly hope that's not the direction they go in. But here's the thing, I actually think this is why choosing Eisenhorn is a good move, because when you think about it and you think about what's involved here, it's something that can be very palatable to an audience, and that they wouldn't necessarily need to know all of the details going on outside of the specific sphere of this character. You wouldn't need to get into explaining the whole history and background of the Imperium. You wouldn't need to get into explaining all of the different Xenos, not even Space Marines and the wider Imperium, because within sci-fi and fantasy just in general, the idea of an Inquisitor, a demon hunter, now that's something that everybody can understand out of the gate. It's something fairly straightforward and commonplace. Also, we have no idea what kind of budget is being played with here, so keeping it to mainly human individuals, and I would imagine a lot of internal environments, a lot of probably blue screen stuff, not massive planetary battles and so on, it's going to keep it a lot more manageable. The positives we already know are we're going to get a lot of rich, deep characters, or we should, who can really bring to life the Imperium and what it means. We may even get through this series a lot of reveals about more civilian life and individuals therein, something we're absolutely starved of in the ordinary Games Workshop material. There's also questions about, look, you know, the Imperium is a very dark place, a very harrowing place, a lot of torture and brutality. How far down the road are they going to go with that? If they skimp on that and it's like, you know, a 12, you know, I mean, you can get away with it, but it's not going to be true to the lore. So it just depends on how they want to play it. There's a lot of questions that we're not going to know probably until the series first comes along. Now, another concern of mine, and this is something I've wanted to mention for some time, but I just didn't have a video to do it on, is about mass market. Now, I fully understand that you can't keep a series or a genre niche and just, you know, locked away forever. And by now, Games Workshop and 40k is in full overdrive. That's why it's doing so well. It's really headed at full speed towards a phrase that makes my stomach turn: mass public audience. And for me, and maybe for you, this should be concerning for many reasons. Now, I know I often see people saying, why no 40k movies, etc. Well, for the reasons I mentioned before, the likely reason it's a very difficult lore and subject to get into with a single movie. That's why a TV series is better. The other issue is that by 40k being released into the public, and I mean obviously you can argue it already is, but you know what I'm saying here, let's not piss about splitting hairs. What I'm saying is the announcement of a TV series is going to draw a lot of new people into the world of 40k, especially when it actually is out there. And look, on the one hand, that's absolutely awesome. You know, I want more people to be aware, I want people to know about 40k. On the other hand, we all know by now through bitter experience how many amazing IPs can be absolutely butchered by being shipped out to a bigger audience, especially if they compromise on the source material. Now, 40k, as we well know, is not a series that deals sensitively with issues that I think many pop cultural critics would struggle to not start hyperventilating about. Why are there no female space marines is of course the gigantic elephant in the room, and it's just something that's going to happen eventually, going to be a huge battle, the likes of Polygon and the Guardian and so on all chipping in, likely having no previous interest in 40k whatsoever. And I'm sorry to go off on this tangent because you guys know I don't really get into this stuff, I stick to the lore when I'm doing lore videos, but this is a fight which is going to happen at some point, and it's through the widening sphere of awareness through things like TV shows that it all gets going. Forget about the fact that 40k has already an immensely diverse array of individual figures, species. Have you heard of the Sisters of Battle, Saint Celestine, Eldar Banshees, Imperial Guard fighters all over the place, Navy commanders, Titans, the list goes on. My simple point being, anybody who starts ranting about 40k doesn't deliver in terms of gender equality or anything like this, they just don't have any idea what they're talking about, and very likely have never even looked at the lore before. They've just looked at the stuff that they've seen offhand and gone, oh my god, this, you know, without actually bothering to understand it, read into it, because, you know, guess what? 40k is a gigantic lore sphere, and it's not that easy to get into immediately and just understand all of the different details, all of the different levels. But once you actually get into it, you understand that, for example, in the Imperium doesn't give a shit about gender. They care about flesh, bodies on the ground fighting. That's what they care about. All of the other bits and pieces are just semantics that have occurred through different historical events and genetic elements and all these kind of things. So I do think though that Games Workshop is at this point really committed to its lore and its background. I think it's very unlikely that they choose to just retcon vast swathes of the lore to appease critics who have just come out of nowhere, because they understand their audience and they understand setting off that is going to be just like a gigantic earthquake in the community. Because at this point in time, the lore of 40k is so vast, you start pulling at that thread, it's going to unravel a very, very complex pattern of connections and history. On the other hand, you have Belisarius Cawl just making things up as he goes along, so who knows what can happen in the future. So the last thing I want to say, feet on the ground please. Now, anybody who knows me from my video game content in the past years knows that this is a big thing for me. Do not allow yourself to get overhyped. Am I being a miserable bastard and saying, hey, you're not allowed to be excited? Come on, I'm excited for this. I think this is long overdue, and tentatively it sounds like it has some very good people working on the project. However, huge caveat to this, Games Workshop has been very hit and miss with its projects. If the video game side of things is our point of reference, and it really is, it's literally flip a coin as to whether this turns out to be a celebrated gem of a series or just shite. So, you know, it could seriously go either way. So be excited, let your imagination run with what ifs and what could come out of this, and, you know, keep your feet on the ground. If only for the reason that we all know by now, if you allow your expectations to fly so high that you lose sight of what's realistically possible, by the time the actual series comes along, you've just set yourself up for disappointment, even if it's actually good. This happens all the time in video games now, because video games have become so over the top with their marketing and their hype campaigns, that by the time the game actually comes along, people's expectations are just so over the top that the game can never ever live up to what people expect, and people ruin things for themselves that way. So this is what I'm trying to say, don't ruin this for yourself. So that's my small advice for you, just take a deep breath and let's see what comes of it all. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in the hype train because you'll spoil it for yourself. And now that we know this is actually coming, we can discuss it a lot more in the future, and we can have some fun with ideas about what could happen here, what could happen there, especially once the series gets started. But also right now, we just know very little. My best advice for you, pick up the Eisenhorn series from the Black Library, read it. You can grab the EPUBs and get straight into it. I'll include the link at the top of my video notes section down below. More content this week for you guys. I'm straight into finishing the next vid after this. Part 3 of Dark Origins I hope to be finished and coming up toward the end of next week. So tell me your thoughts about the Eisenhorn TV series, guys, down below. This is Luton. I'll see you in the next one.